But you know, from the beginning, the international community, when they were building this TFG, they give them don't interfere Somaliland. Just
don't interfere
Somaliland.
Yeah.
Interfere the affairs of Somaliland. Just build your institutions in Somalia. They have that message from the international community. And that's why they are not. But the other day, Somalia is not a country. They are a country because they claim on us. And they have been given that they are the legitimate government for Somalia, which sometimes we see as Somalilanders. Ironic when we heard that news from the international community. The people who are not putting their house in order to claim that they are, sometimes it can be something not good to the Somalis. The people who are not doing anything will represent the Somali. It become something that we cannot, even to listen is very difficult. That people who are not reconciling by themselves for 17 years. And sometimes we ask why Somaliland that have been neglected have set up a rule of law in place and functioning state in place. And Somalia that have been supported by the international community have never materialized anything for almost 17 years. It's a question to be answered by the international community.
But no secret talks. Colin had a follow-up, and you had a question. You wanted to just follow up?
Just a quick follow-up. There was an article, I think it was in the Post a couple of months ago, about the Department of Defense and an internal debate within the U.S. government about Somaliland, and the Department of Defense was actually more supportive of recognizing Somaliland. And everyone knows the U.S. government isn't a monolith. So do you see different parts within the U.S. government that are more sympathetic, and is there a strategy to
I'm aware of
run the interagency from the outside?
More or less, we met with the State Department, we met with the Pentagon, we met different places. I see all are sympathetic, but at last we concluded, they showed us that the willingness that they can do something for us in the future. But we concluded that if there is a will, there is a way. Let them try to sort out a way that they can help us in the future. That was the conclusion that we made.
If I may add to what the president is just saying, that we are aware of the article, of course. I read it as you read early in the morning with the first cup of coffee. It was really good to see that. It has been a long drought for me here in Washington, D.C. So the issue is just that I would say that no, there is no division, as a matter of fact. And again, when it comes to the harmonization between the two departments, from what we have seen only, I cannot otherwise say that, particularly on this issue, I think the policies for the Department of State and the feeling seems to be mutual, but we will see where it goes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm Catherine Southwick. I'm from Refugees International. And Mr. President, I was wondering if you or your colleagues could speak a little bit about, the fact that you're this sort of an island of peace in a very volatile region. What are you anticipating in terms of refugee flows into Somaliland, and what is your assessment of Somaliland's willingness and capacity to host these refugee populations? What kind of plans are in place or should be in place?
It will be very difficult for us to receive refugees. They are in place already. They came all the way from Mogadishu. Some come from Ethiopia. They are in place, but we cannot receive refugees because to our capacity. Because there are already internally displaced people of our own in place. The UNHCR brought all our refugees from Djibouti and from Ethiopia. About 800,000 are still, they are scattered in the streets. They have no shelter, no houses. So it will be very difficult for a country like us to receive refugees. Although we didn't send them out, but we cannot help them.
We have time for just one last question, Mr. President, and then his schedule requires that we adjourn.
My name is Andre Lesage. I'm at the National Defense University. I was wondering if you could comment on the situation in Somalia and what you see as the prospects for further reconciliation there, the ability of the transitional federal government to broaden its base of support and maybe become more inclusive and stabilize the situation, and if you'd have any advice to give them on their way forward.
I would have given them advice if they like it. But they didn't need advice because they are satisfied with their situation, because they are a government who goes to all forums, to the United Nations, to the African Union, to the Arab League, to the Islamic Conference, and I think they are satisfied with this scenario. They have been doing this business for the last 17 years, and they never make any change on the ground. So I don't think that these people need any advice, or they can read between the lines the process that we are more or less Somalis, and we know each other. They know the process that we have made. We focused and addressed our own problems one by one and solved the problem. They would have done like that. But unfortunately, they are not ready for that because they are entertaining this conference that they are going to abroad. I will advise them
Dick has asked for one last question.
to go through our process.
It's not a question.
Reconcile, make compromise between them. That's my advice.
Somaliland was able to reconcile it because they did it themselves without any outside finance. The TFG is totally satisfied as long as the government, international community is financing their operation.
If we were only financing a process that would have led to some, but that's not what we've been doing.
No, we have, unfortunately, funded the wrong process.
Well, yeah, we're talking about the same thing.
One of our African friends told us there is only one who has been there, one of the governments stated and said there is only one Somaliland functions, and there is a system that functions. In TFG, there is only one ministry that functions, and that is Minister of Finance.
Well, look, Mr. President, I'm delighted that you were able to come to the Wilson Center. We've been delighted to host you today. I think it's been a very useful and fruitful exchange, especially for those of us, I confess, that have been not focused on Somaliland. This has been very useful for me personally.
Your center have a lot of information because better than many people.
Well, this has been very...
Somaliland, anywhere.
Well, my last intensive engagement was in the good old days of Siad Barre. I will close in just one little anecdote, which sort of reinforces your last comment. We met with Siad Barre in '81, my first time I was in Somalia, and with his entire government. We were there for several days. And 6 months later, the entire government met with me again, this time in my congressional office when I was chairing the Africa subcommittee. And they were there to tell, and now they all were dissidents. And they were there to tell me that everything they had told us 6 months earlier were a pack of lies. Unfortunately, that tradition is somewhat continued. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
It's a double-edged sword, yes. That's a double-edged sword. You don't know.
Good lady.
No, I mean,
Do me a favor. More than 80%.
yes, I know.
That means that you should expand. No. Nick, how are you doing? He's a good guy. Okay. Good.
Thank you.
He's the best. Andre, Chief.
What was that organization that you identified yourself as independent?
Yeah, no, it's very new in Washington. It was formed in the UK 2 years ago. The office is now in Brussels, New York, London, of course.
What is it?
Well, it is basically an organization to